for joining us. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Your guest speaker for today, Sven Stricker, is going to be joining us via telephone. So he's going to be giving us a call here any minute now. But I'm going to go ahead and just give an introduction of his background. He's an associate working for Carrington Coleman right now. His areas of specialization are in arbitration and trial, construction, real estate litigation, estate probate, but more importantly, patent work. And I see him here. Sven, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Wonderful, wonderful. I hear you. I hear you. Yes, I'm so excited. So I'm definitely going to be sending you live, and I may have to hold up a photo of you while we blast your voice out to the masses, but I'll continue to introduce you. Sven graduated from the University of Texas School of Law, where he served as symposium editor for the Review of Litigation. He earned his BBA and BS summa cum laude in economics, graduating first in his class from UT Arlington, so go Mavs. And prior to joining Carrington Coleman, Mr. Stricker, of course, interned for Chief Judge Barbara Lynn at the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas in Dallas, and also worked for Kelly Hart and Hallman, a wonderful law firm in the Fort Worth area. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Sven Stricker.
Well, good afternoon.
Uh-oh. Sven, we lost you.
Yes.
There we go. I did that. I think I did that by accident. There you go. Can we hear you?
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction, Amber, and apologies that there is no video today, but we have made it, and I'm here. And it's lovely to be doing this and speaking with UTA students. It feels like, I don't know, a few months ago that I was there on campus at the business school. And, you know, I know it's been almost 5-6 years now, but I hope I can be helpful to anyone considering law school or already completely fully into the idea of going to law school and the application process and what it's like to be an attorney, or you know what to expect when you're expecting to go to law school and all those types of things. So my purpose here today is to give you a little background into patent litigation, which sounds kind of intimidating, and some of it is, but like most litigation, all the similar rules will apply on the procedural side and the law and how it's applied to the facts. The facts are what get interesting and you know, can get overly technical as compared to other types of litigation. But more importantly, my purpose here today is to stimulate discussion and be open for any questions that any of you might have about practicing law at a law firm, what to expect in law school, the preparation for law school process, LSATs, you know, resumes, writing samples, all that fun stuff. No question is too simple or, you know, too dull or whatever you may think. Feel free to ask me anything, and we can just kind of have a naturally flowing conversation as well. But to kind of jump off Amber's point of patent law, I actually don't have a patent litigation task on my desk right now, but at Kelly Hart and Hallman, as Amber mentioned, my previous law firm, I left that law firm in August, and now I'm with Carrington Coleman, but we had a steady diet of intellectual property cases, namely IP patent cases. So, you know, I'm sure everyone kind of has a general understanding of what intellectual property is. You know, it's kind of ideas, designs.
Well, actually, if you would break it down what it is, that would be so helpful, just in case we do have people that are joining us that have absolutely no idea what that is.
Sure. So intellectual property, you know, is protected in law. For example, kind of in 3 different tranches. You have patents, you have copyright, and you have trademarks. So patents are, you know, at least in the area I've been dealing with, are mostly design patents. You know, how things function, how things work. Think, you know, your phone or your computer that's in front of you. There would be, you know, a microprocessor company underneath that that's supplying chips, you know, to the much bigger company that we all know the names of these computers. And those companies underneath the name on your computer they supply microprocessors, and the functionality of those chips and so forth is protected by patent law, right? It takes a lot of research and development to configure those microprocessors, the transistors, how efficient they are from an energy savings standpoint. So since a lot of R&D and research and development goes into that, you want those ideas protected for a certain period of time that other people can't just reverse engineer a product and copy it, so to speak. So, a party, an entity, a company would apply for a patent with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And that's a whole process, and that's why I'm nervous about calling myself a patent attorney, because I don't deal with the front end of that process, right? So there's very sophisticated attorneys that have very technical backgrounds, and they also have a patent bar license to go to the USPTO and apply for a patent with a company, and basically they hash out the details of what that patent is going to cover based on prior patents on record and on file at the USPTO. So that's where I primarily deal. You have copyright. I have a couple colleagues that do that. That's generally, think of like book publications, think of music. If you've ever heard songs that sound kind of similar, there's probably a lawsuit going on over that. But that's kind of not my deal. And that's a different office altogether. That's I believe the U.S. Copyright Office. And then trademarks, of course, think of the Apple. If you have an Apple computer, that's a trademark. So another company can't have an image for a commercial use that has a substantially similar type of look to it, right? Because then you are either directly or indirectly, benefiting off of someone else's trademark. And that's also an area I don't deal in. And it's an area of law that's really niche. It's patent laws. There's a lot more substantial patent law practice. But anyway, all these tranches, patents, copyright, trademarks, the United States Code, I think it's section 35, at least for patents, and different sections for trademarks, they protect those rights when a person or entity goes to seek protection for an idea or a design. And it enables people or entities to earn recognition and financial benefit from what they invent and what they create. So, the law generally tries to strike the right balance between, the interests of innovators and creators and people that pour a lot of money and, sweat equity into those ideas, and the wider public interest, right? Because, the patents do expire. It's 20 years. And, after that, it's fair game. But the idea is that, look, you can license that patent, meaning that you can give the rights of other people or entities to use it at a price. So it's not that it's just for one entity. The free market can dictate how much that patent and the rights to it is worth. So anyway, that's kind of the general umbrella. And feel free to interrupt me at any time or for any questions or any follow-up, and Amber can stimulate that. But kind of patent law specifically, again, it's governed exclusively by federal law. And those of you going to law school will learn this, I'm sure, within the first few weeks, that there are cases that are heard in state court, and there are cases that are heard in federal court. And you probably already know that already. But you may ask yourself, well, what determines that, right? Is it just whatever the plaintiff picks, whoever files a suit, they can just choose whatever they want? No, there is a lot of concurrent jurisdiction, but patent law is exclusively in the federal court system. It arises under federal law, and it specifically delineates in the code that it can only be heard in district courts of the United States. So, these disputes, again, center around a patent and what it says. So, a plaintiff will come to the courthouse and say, hey, we have a patent, and, without naming companies, because I'll probably accidentally name a former client or something, is that, some company, think of tech companies, are using what we described in our patent in one of their products, right? So think of like software, cloud functionality, think of microprocessors and chips, and it can get quite technical, but patent law is really only technical from a factual standpoint. So understanding microprocessor functionality, prioritization levels for mode interrupt systems, that's just a fancy word, fancy way of saying everyone knows what a battery mode is on their phone, right? Or an energy saver mode on your phone, right? There are patents that dictate how those things function. And when you go into like a battery mode or an energy saver mode, what tasks or what applications take priority in that type of mode, right? So yeah, that's kind of, you know, an interesting kind of niche that I've been practicing formally, is kind of those types of microprocessor functionalities, which are really technical, but I don't have a technical background. It's kind of like, if you're a quick study and really interested in these things, it's something that's not, you're not barred from practicing at all. You know, another area that's been really interesting is mobile deposit applications for electronic devices. Think of how you can scan a check on your phone or whatever, right? There's a patent that underlies that, right? And so when all these big banking institutions use these types of applications, they're not inventing that application. There's other companies that have patents to it. So these disputes arise typically when big companies are using their products in a way where they haven't, or it's alleged that they haven't sought license under a patent. And they duke it out in court to say, well, the patent actually covers what that product is doing, or it doesn't. And there's a whole process that takes place, like in any civil lawsuit. And the reason I emphasize that it's only technical from a factual standpoint, once you kind of get past, you know, understanding the technology, you know, the technical, you know, application of the patent, it's like any other civil case. You know, federal rules of civil procedure apply. You know, we go through motion to dismiss stages, which says, hey, the plaintiff hasn't alleged enough facts, or the law doesn't properly overlay those facts, that they can't get relief that they're seeking. So, you know, this applies in any lawsuit. We go through motions to dismiss, motions to transfer, which basically says, hey, this case shouldn't be here in this district. It should be in another district in the United States, because that's where the company's headquartered, or that's where the interests of the public are most relevant, and those types of things. Attorney-client privilege issues, discovery, which is, you know, the exchange of information between the parties in a civil lawsuit. Everything else applies like in any other case. Patent law is niche in the respect that the facts and the technicality of some of the products and the technologies are kind of really complex. And as a result, it helps to be a quick study, and it helps more so if you have like an electrical engineering background or a computer science background is helpful, but it definitely doesn't disclose you from kind of entering the practice area, if that's kind of where you fall into in your practice as you become attorneys.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point. Is there an area within intellectual property or patents where a technical background would be required or would be exceptionally useful?
I mean, the technology I described, for sure. I've worked on teams of 20 or 30 lawyers on some of these cases with bigger law firms where we're co-counsel together. And, you know, you'll see a mix of folks with kind of liberal arts backgrounds or electrical engineering backgrounds. And, you know, how it kind of delineates itself is that folks with very hyper-technical backgrounds really get involved in the discovery process and reading like source code for software or something like that, you know, or computer science background. And, you know, folks with less technical backgrounds, they can also get involved in that if they're quick studies and they're kind of just really interested in it. But get more involved in, like I was describing, the kind of procedural side of these patent cases, like, again, motions to dismiss, motions to transfer, discovery hearings, attorney-client privilege disputes that parties have, and hearings they have in front of the court. Those are kind of transferable across any practice area. So you'll get teams with a nice mix of folks that have technical backgrounds and non-technical backgrounds. But as a general matter, yeah, it's helpful to have, you know, maybe taken a couple computer science classes if it's something you know you're going to be interested in, just so you have familiarity with it. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's helpful as a general matter. But it doesn't disclose you from pursuing it if that's something you're interested in. But, you know, I would say, I would say on paper, it's a little trickier to pursue it.
Right.
So, I can keep going, or
no, you're perfectly fine. So I guess I just kind of would like to steer it back to maybe more details related to what you do, because I know you said you recently transitioned to a place where you don't have as much of that on your desk. So if you'd like to share a little bit more about what you particularly do and what a day is like in your life, I'm sure attendees would like to know that.
Oh, sure. So I don't have a patent case on my desk right now, although Carrington Coleman does have a small a patent practice. I've settled. I concluded. Well, this is the last day of my second week, so I'm just been getting settled in. But thus far, it's more traditional litigation cases. For example, we have one in a probate court down in San Antonio involving an oil and gas dispute. I have another case involving an employment matter where, it's alleged that there's unlawful termination. So like yesterday, for example, one day you can have a lot of meetings with partners about certain issues that are coming up, especially where I am, I guess near the end of my second year now, is, I'll speak for the last 2 years. It's a lot of, as a general matter, your day can look massively different from day to day. But, one steady theme is a lot of research and a lot of writing. Whether those are memos to clients or portions of motions or writing whole motions, depending on the partner you have and the stakes of the case. Responsibility will kind of go up the lower stakes of the cases. And, obviously, the bigger the cases are, they're bigger teams, and responsibility gets kind of doled out differently with respect to seniority levels. But yeah, so your day can look very different, but the first few years you're doing a lot of research, a lot of writing. You're going to be writing motions. You may not be, because I know a lot of folks are maybe in moot courts, and those are great, and debate clubs and those types of things, or competitions, and those are great. You may not be able to go in front of a court depending on the firm you're at and those types of things until a couple of years in. I've had some exposure in front of judges, but not a lot yet. And again, that's kind of dictated by the client and, how high stakes the case is viewed. But yeah, a lot of client calls, client meetings, partner meetings, updates on research, on all angles of a case, building up to trial. Everything is building up to trial, right? And I know that moot courts and those types of things are great, and they definitely focus on trial. I've had 2 trials in almost 2 years. So it's something that is out of the ordinary, and I think the number is closer to 95% now of cases settled before trial. So there's a whole lot of work that goes in ahead of trial. And it's kind of something that even in law school, they don't, as you'll soon learn, prepare you for as adequately as they should, in my opinion. But
yeah, no, I will agree. They don't have a focus on getting you practice ready, but the goal is to really shape the way that you think.
Exactly.
But I think that's a good transition into some areas that I would definitely like for you to touch on, namely your experience with UT Law. I have so many students that are clawing and scratching to get into UT Law every single year. So, I mean, you did it. You cracked the code. So first and foremost, why did you choose UT Law? How did you come to that decision? And then second, how did you get such a coveted seat at that law school?
Well, I suspect for the same reasons that a lot of people are clawing to get in there, that was probably my same motivation. The strength of the school, and at least informally, I think most people understand it's a pretty good school, at least regionally for sure, and has a lot of national pull. And when I say that, I mean to say that employment law firms tend to look very approvingly upon UT Law. It was in-state tuition for me, which is also a huge plus, and I'm sure that's on a lot of people's minds as well, that are in-state Texas, and it's a relatively speaking, an affordable option as compared to private schools. And yeah, I would say that was kind of like the surface level. Hey, look, it's a great school. Job placement numbers are great. It's a school in Texas. I know I wanted to stay in Texas.
Yes.
And we can talk about that as well. I think UT has some good national pull for sure. But if you're looking to practice in Alaska or something, or Minnesota, your option profile may change. But I was looking to stay in Dallas or Houston or Austin, so it kind of made natural sense. And yeah, just kind of the reasons like, hey, it's a tough school to get into. It must have a great atmosphere, kind of a collegial atmosphere. Everyone's, hungry to do well in law school, that type of thing. So I got in, I did well at UTA, luckily. My vice protector GPA, it's one of the easiest things. I mean, I know classes are tough and, managing all those things, but it's one of the things pre-application process that's really in your control. Kind of protect your GPA, do as well as you can with what you have in front of you. Give it your best shot on the LSAT. And I had some good recommenders. I got off the wait list, talk about scratching and clawing my way in. I think I early applied and they just put everyone on the wait list, it seemed, my brother included. Took the LSAT one more time, got another letter of recommendation from a former alum. And, I think everything in conjunction pushed me over the edge, and I was absolutely elated. I think the June before August, so only 2 months lead time, that I came off the list. And I couldn't get there fast enough.
I can imagine. That's fantastic. Speaking of, environment, give us the skinny, we won't tell. What did you like? What did you dislike about your UT Law experience? Everybody's got some things that they love and hate about everything. So share, let us know what we can expect.
Well, I mean, law school, and of course, Ms. White can speak to this, it is a kind of transformative experience. I think you're going to find that across any law school, right? It kind of does challenge the way you think, and it's so easy to kind of, and no one knows what I'm talking about except for Ms. White and I until you go to law school.
Yes.
And it really challenges the assumptions you make in your logical thinking. And it tries to beat that out of you in the first year. I think that's the goal of first year, right? It did all those great things like I think every law school is going to do. I did love the professors we had because it is a pretty, very sought after school and highly ranked. We had very great professors. Professor Levinson, you'll go to law school and you'll see those big, huge books, that everyone has across the whole country, really. And, having the professor that writes it for everyone and having his insight was nice. I'm trying to remember professors that we had. Professor Bobbitt, which is LBJ's nephew, was one of my professors. So,
wow.
You kind of have these really interesting characters that are plugged into these different networks, and we were right next to the LBJ school. So as far as like tapping into sources of great theoretical professors, and I'll get to the theoretical versus practical distinction in a second, I think it was really, second to none. Of course, you have some Ivy League schools in the Northeast that are even more highly coveted, but we really had some great professors, and they really challenged the way that you think at a very high level. And it was very collegial, I will say, and I'll get into the students you're going to be in law school with. The collegial atmosphere was fantastic. I think Austin maybe has something to do with that. Everyone was laid back. Everyone worked really hard, but everyone was willing to lend a helping hand during the term is used, or people that would do anything to get an A, even if it's at the cost of their future colleagues. UT has an extremely strong network of alum that are more than willing to reach out to students and help them along their career journey. And I was blessed with many great alumni connections while I was there, and kind of plugged me into the legal scene in Austin and Fort Worth. It's a great school on all those fronts. Of course, there are downfalls to any school, and one of them is practical, getting you ready to practice. UT is a fantastic school. Harvard's a great school. They are not going to, these schools are not going to be really focused on teaching you how to draft discovery requests, asking the other party to hand over documents or something. It's kind of A, boring, and B, these law school professors, as great as they are, most of them have only been law school professors because, they graduated top in their class from Harvard and they became professors, and they're great, and they're theoretically great. So you might miss out on some of that you'll have to pick up on your own. And, as a counterpoint, Baylor Law School does a fantastic job of making attorneys practice ready, maybe at the cost of, some cool theoretical classes. Everything about Baylor is litigation, and your third year is a nightmare year as far as all the work you'll have to do, but it makes you practice ready. And so a lot of the Baylor law school grads I've come across are really sharp with respect to the practical nature of practicing. So I would say that was kind of the one, negative, if that is one. But I have to say overall, I absolutely love my experience at UT Law.
Well, and to make sure that everyone understands, that is not unique to top 14 schools or UT. I graduated from law school at SMU, and they it's very similar. You're going to get a theoretical approach to legal education, but you're really mostly expected to get that experience from an internship. You know what I mean? And they want you to go out and learn that for yourself. But they're going to teach you how to think and reason and all that beautiful stuff. So, but I think that kind of gives me a little bit of a segue into internships opportunity, Sven. What internship opportunities were you able to get for yourself? Because I did see that you actually got to work with Judge Barbara Lynn, and my fun story is Barbara Lynn judged my championship mock trial round. That was phenomenal for me to get to experience her, and so every time I see her name, I get chills because she's such a fantastic woman. So please share your experiences, and then let students know how they can get internship opportunities both in college and in law school. What are some strategies for landing things like that?
Right. I'll start off with Barbara Lynn, or Judge, first, and I won't disclose anything she said in chambers because she would hear it from 1,000 miles away. But I mean, yes, a fantastic woman, fantastic jurist, fantastic attorney, in every single respect. She was at Carrington Coleman. She was the first female partner at Carrington Coleman. I believe in the early 80s, she was promoted partner, back, in the 70s and so forth, when that wasn't a time when, unfortunately, when females were promoted at law firms.
Right.
So she was the first in Dallas, in kind of a boys club, so to speak. And because on her merit, she was maybe the best attorney at the firm. And, they couldn't deny how good she was. So she has great connections with Dallas. I know she has close ties with SMU. And she has close ties with Carrington Coleman. So I think part of the reason that they looked favorably upon me coming for an interview. So I did spend the summer with her in 2016. I mean, it was honestly kind of luck. I did fairly well my first semester of law school, and just started applying immediately in December. You guys will learn this all, everyone who's listening, if and when you go to law school, that the application track for internships is really fast paced. So you want to take a learning lesson from your application to law school and crank that up, 2-3-fold as you apply for internships at the end of your first semester. You'll be writing nothing but cover letters everywhere.
Right.
Double and triple check the names and all that fun stuff. I mean, I've admittedly made mistakes, but yeah, no, I just applied to a lot of federal judges. Of course, had phone interviews with many of them. One of them being Judge Lynn and her clerks. And yeah, she had UT students and SMU students, and had an SMU student and a UT one and a Georgetown one. And I mean, having exposure to her, and like Ms. White said, yeah, law school generally is geared to kind of get your theoretical thinking or disabuse you of your previous thinking. And then you go out on internships and learn what it's really like. Go sit in a real civil trial, have the judge say, hey, I want this motion to remand, which is a motion to send a matter back to state court. It doesn't belong in federal court. Go write this. And you're like, well, I've never heard about this in law school. What is that? And so you kind of start from square one, like, what is a motion to remand? And so that's what Ms. White was referring to, like just kind of learning on the job, which is really helpful. But it kind of does make you question, like, hold on a second, like what I've been doing in law school.
Where my tuition dollars going?
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's designed to make you think of this higher level, and then you go out and learn it, which is a great balance, I think, as well. So no, it was a great experience. I just got my applications in quickly. Had a solid first semester. Nothing knocking out of the park, but did okay. And applied broadly to a lot of judges, and I knew that she was a great judge, and already heard her name discussed in the legal communities, and if I can get an internship with her, that'd be great long term, and I think it has paid off long term. So yeah, just do well coming out of the gate, and get your applications wherever they may be in quickly. Much like applying for law school, and then the chips kind of fall where they will, and then do a good job in your internship and show up on time and be likable and all that stuff.
Good. Yeah. I echo all of that. I think that's 100% a successful strategy. And so switching gears a little bit, I'm sure you're not living in Antarctica, so full well we're in the middle of a pandemic. Things have pretty much shifted gears 100%. There is a tremendous amount of social unrest. And students are really quickly turning to law and our justice system, and turning to social activism to want to resolve some of the issues within our courts, issues within our society, and really they're open to any and all facets of the law, practices of the law, and any and all ways to do that. So, I mean, as someone who's out there practicing right now in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of social unrest globally, what advice would you share with students for, just kind of what they can expect practice to look like in this COVID/post-COVID world?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild run, right? I graduated 2018 from UT Law. Everything was, in context of what you're speaking about, quote unquote normal, right? There's
Right.
always something going on, but my practice got started off just in a normal sense. You go to the office, you meet with partners, everything's hunky-dory in a sense, except for the long hours from time to time. But yeah, I mean, everything started out nicely, and March, everything kind of just changed. Our law firm was on lockdown like many places. We were all quarantined and working remotely, and I guess you have to be comfortable with expecting the unexpected, I guess, going forward. I think that's going to be ingrained in a lot of students, is the idea of really being flexible, not just with respect to your office environment and working remotely, because those have benefits and downfalls too. But I think even a lot of older partners that have a certain view of how things should be, and associates should be the first ones in and the last ones out, and even those perceptions are changing, because I think we're learning that people are, generally speaking, just as efficient and helpful working remotely, especially during this environment. But well, yeah, what I would say is flexibility, especially in this current environment. Obviously, the quarantine is one facet. The economy in certain areas of the economy shutting down and those types of things is another facet. And especially early in your career, being very flexible and open to different practice areas and practice groups. I think that's been edified with this pandemic, right? I practiced, I mean, I kind of went in for, going to a mid-sized law firm, so there are a lot of different opportunities. You don't get staffed on huge teams in one practice group. I kind of have the ability to kind of shift around on some smaller cases, which has been nice. But what you're seeing now is, and this could totally change when some of these folks graduate law school, but you're seeing a lot of transactional practice groups not have as much work. And so a lot of people shifting over to litigation, or shifting over to finance, or probate, or family law, and kind of maintaining that flexibility. I think lawyers are inherently kind of flexible, but now I think it's almost in overdrive, where your ability to kind of put on different hats, and within ethical considerations that you can learn and have experience with it, to kind of be open to different practice areas instead of just shutting yourself down. That has been augmented. And that's going to be a thing going forward for the foreseeable future, because certain law firms have struggled because their client base is not doing well during the COVID pandemic, and others there's been no change at all, and some may be even doing better during this landscape. Patent law, for instance, it's full steam ahead forward. I mean, think about the companies that are involved in this. Think of all your big tech companies. Everyone's using technology remotely. Think of all these software platforms. So these are usually patents that are at issue. So these companies can afford to keep paying the bills, right? So it's kind of been an insulated practice group. So I think maintaining complete flexibility as you go forward in law school and take, a variety of classes that are applicable, and, who knows how it's going to shake out. I can't imagine graduating law school just this 2020 and taking the bar. I think they're taking it right now, actually.
Right.
Taking the bar exam right now.
Yeah, because I actually have a former student who let me know that she's in New York, and she was full steam ahead preparing for the July bar when I'm not even sure if it's July actually, but she was preparing for the recent bar exam, and she was told to stop, that they were going to postpone the exam until further notice, and that I was devastated for her. It's just, that's tough. But I think they rescheduled it, and other states are also dealing with rescheduling of bar exams, and my goodness, as tough as it is, going into law school, yeah, it's very tough to come out because there's a lot of confusion about what do we do, how do we navigate these waters.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the short term, like it's definitely, it's a struggle, and I'm sure a lot of students are suffering with those types of uncertainties with respect to, I need my bar license. Firms are deferring start dates for revenue reasons and those types of things. I think long term, obviously the short term, it's no fun. I think the long term effects are going to be, these attorneys are going to have a lot of resiliency. They're going to be very open to different types of practice areas, and very open to the idea of hopping around, putting different hats on. And I think the ABA is slowly starting to, the American Bar Association is slowly starting to come around, and a lot of the states to a nationwide bar licensure. Texas just switched.
Yes, they did.
So that you're able to practice anywhere. Well, I think it's like 35 states now if you get and I forget the agreement that it's called, the MBE perhaps, or something like that. But
the UBE, uniform bar exam.
Yeah, that's right, uniform. So to have ultimate flexibility in geographic location and practice area and those types of things. So I think these attorneys will be the most resilient bunch that are coming out now, although the short-term heartburn is real.
Right. Right. Well, so, I'm going to ask the question that, I'm sure is on people's minds, and that possibly they're afraid to ask, but, it's good to have a platform to be able to ask uncomfortable questions. Let's say you really, really have been working very hard to go to law school, and you've been, pushing towards this goal. Would you, as a person that's out there in practice, and I almost feel like I know what you're going to say, but would you, as someone who's out there in practice now, encourage students to wait, take a gap year, see what's going to go on, or just forge full steam ahead and apply to law school, start COVID or no COVID, and just take that chance? What would Sven Stricker do?
I mean, I love the question because it demands a law school answer. It depends, right? So yeah, since you asked what would Sven Stricker do, I'm a fan of the gap year. I like it. I took a gap year. It worked out well for me. I did some traveling, worked a little bit. I had family overseas. So I really enjoyed my gap year. I think it was helpful for me with my maturity level to take a year at the time. Also to really get my application how I wanted it. I think I was too hurried my senior year UTA. I was taking 18 hours each semester. And again, that's where the depends comes in, right? If you have 10 hours and 12 hours and you're kind of just, walking away to the finish line, you have time to really focus on the LSAT and all of your application materials. I felt a little hurried, and I did apply and I got in at some places, but kind of didn't like the projected debt load, those types of things, and the schools I was considering. So I just took a year off and didn't look back. So again, it's a very personal choice. Where you think you are from a maturity standpoint, what you're expected. If you are taking out debt, that's a very real thing, as with undergrad. It could heighten for any graduate school. Those are things that to be taken seriously. and what your risk profile is, and all those types of fun things. It's really going to depend on the person, but as a general matter, I do like the idea of a gap year. Even if you're on the fence of law schools for you, or being a lawyer is for you. That's why I encourage people, if they can, and Ms. White's a great resource for that, to get in touch with people that are attorneys, and if it's possible to shadow a deposition, to be in a room for a deposition, or go meet up with an attorney for lunch and have a government attorney, a DA's office attorney, and ask them what their day-to-day is like, and so you can get real insight, and hopefully they'll be frank with you. They're not selling you anything, right? So
Right.
what it's like to practice as an attorney, and what's being a DA like versus working for a government agency, and versus working at a big law firm, versus working at a personal injury firm with 4 attorneys. It's going to vary a lot from the type of law you're practicing, government, private, the size of the law firm, geographic, location, the type of clients, right? This is all granular stuff that might be hard to figure out as an undergrad, but insofar as it's possible, it's good to get that information pool large.
Good deal. Well, and I did not know that you had family overseas. I think that's awesome. You got the chance to travel and find yourself. I have so many students that are in different scenarios, and I'm so glad that you kind of touch base on both sides of the spectrum of, if you are not feeling like you're quite ready, or if you're not in that mature place, because I have had students graduate at 19 years old and say, I'm ready to go out and practice, and then I had to say, hold on, take a minute, be 19. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have those students that really are ready, really can handle what's to come. So forge ahead. I loved your response. It's a perfect lawyer response. I loved that response. And so you brought up something, big firm, small firm, and we've had different attorneys tell us different things about it, but I do want to hear your take on it. So when it comes to practice area, and I know you're, this was like a patent law presentation, but I love that you've taken care to break down a wide spectrum of information for us. When it comes to practice area, do you believe that you have the freedom to choose your practice area and your niche, or do you believe that the practice area finds you and you are just moved by the current, so to speak, into a certain field?
Me personally, the latter, but not wholly. And I think that students that complete law school and do internships and go on to be lawyers will learn this very quickly. Your practice area will largely be determined by the partner or partners for whom you work, right? So, and I guess begging the question, why is that? I mean, unless a lot of students, folks listening right now, have clients waiting for them when they graduate law school, you're not going to have any clients when you go to a law firm. Maybe you have a friend that needs a will done or something like that, but your partner is going to have clients, and those clients are going to have needs, and you're going to service those clients. Again, in law school, and I say that again, if you have a technical background and you have been geared to do biotech patents, right, biotechnology or something like that, and you have let's say you have a PhD in it, because I have a colleague who went to UT that had a PhD in biophysics and biochemistry, and he is doing biotech patent work at a very, very large law firm. He knew exactly what he wanted. He started law school at, I think, 31, 32, because the PhD took forever. And he controlled his practice area because he knew what he wanted to do. And that's perfectly fine. For more generalists, like myself included, and most liberal art graduates going straight out of undergrad, maybe there's a gap year or something and you go straight into law school. You want to be pretty open, to keep your options open, right? When you interview with law firms, you have preferences. You may want to do this, may want to do that. But at least for me, A, you want a job, and B, that something that you kind of like. I knew I wanted to do litigation, right? That's kind of the main divider. Do you do transactional work, meaning deals, put deals together, mergers, acquisitions, those types of things, purchase sales agreements? That's the transactional side. You'll never step foot into a courtroom, hopefully, and the litigation side is all courtroom preparedness. It's when deals have gone awry. That's commercial contract work. There's a dispute how the contract should be interpret it, and then go to court. So I fell on the litigation side, but with respect to practice area, again, at least for most people out of law school are going to be very open because, you know, they want to be amenable to employers that have openings, and you don't want to say, I only want to do this construction law. It's like, well, that's great. But we don't have much of a robust construction law practice. So you disclose yourself from certain areas. So yeah, once you get in your first or second year, you'll kind of feel which partners you like working for. And if you like working for a partner that does construction work or family law, you'll just start gravitating towards him or her and asking for more work from him or her. So there is control, but it's really going to depend on the office environment. And if there's just pure need from a partner that does employment law, and you're like, well, I don't like employment law. It's like, well, we need bodies to do employment law. You're going to start becoming an expert on employment law, whether you like it or not. At least, you know, if you want to stay there. So I say that there are levels of control depending on the person, the background, and how much their mind is made up from the outset of going to law school.
I enjoy particularly the part about if you want to keep working there, you're going to do employment law. That's pretty much what it is. You know, we've got a job for you, and take it or leave it. I absolutely, and it's important that they kind of know that going in. I do hear from students, it's like I have to practice criminal law, and you know, to a certain degree, you can choose which law firms you make. Or excuse me, you may apply to. I think that much is in your control, but outside of that, you're absolutely right. Whatever it is that they need you to do, you will be doing.
Right, and the thing is too, I mean, at least me, the intellectual process is the same, right? You can be interested in employment law versus personal injury law or something like that, but the themes are generally the same. Like I said, it's all preparing for trial, and you're under the same rule regime in state courts and federal courts. It's just the facts that are different, really. And yeah, you know, some people get a lot of enjoyment out of the facts, and you know, they're really geared towards it, and that's all fine and good. But the intellectual stimulation, and you should be intellectually stimulated at least a little bit by reading law cases, because you're going to be reading a ton. If you don't like reading, very active critical thinking reading, you may want to rethink going to law school in general. But I'm sure everyone listening, you know, they're already great thinkers in that respect and great readers and love doing it. But yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of that type of research, and so that's why I think it's great to be open to every practice area and kind of be a jack of all trades in that respect. It just makes you more valuable of an asset at the firm you're at or a future firm. And I think the bigger thing for me is the culture of the law firm you're at, and those types of things, and you know, feeling, you know, part of a closely knit team at a law firm more than practice area, at least for me.
Right. No, that makes sense. So what I'm going to do, I am going to give us a couple minutes because we're right at the edge of our time. That was actual perfect timing. So I know we're operating on a bit of a 10 to 20 second delay. So I'm going to remind everyone once again, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A chat so that we can make sure to get those addressed. And I'll leave it for just a couple seconds to give people a chance to get something written if they have that. But I do want to take a moment to thank you so much, Sven, for your time. I know we had some technical difficulties earlier, and that I'm so sorry for that, but this actually worked out really well. And I can hear you perfectly, and the audience can hear you perfectly. So I think it actually worked out really well. So once again, if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. There's not a bad question, unless it's what's the speaker's name, and then that's a bad question. But other than that, feel free to share. Otherwise, we'll close us out. Sven, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like the attendees to know or share? Or
yeah, you know, at the time, you know, if you're in your last couple of years of undergrad, you know, enjoy it. Take if you have liberty to take some different classes, do it. You know, some of the classes that I didn't think would be transferable to practice as an attorney or law school, you know, are totally so, and I would have never taken them unless I had, you know, the freedom within my undergraduate plan to take a wide variety of classes. And because you'll be doing the same thing in law school, you don't want to have a rigid plan either way. So try to enjoy your last year or so of school, and you're gonna take another level when you get to law school, and I'm sure as Ms. White can attest to. And then that's why I'm a big proponent of the gap year as well. So if you're unsure about those types of specifics, so should I take a gap year? There's no right answer for anyone. Don't feel that you should be compelled to do something because everyone else is doing it. It's all a very personal plan and a personal journey in law school, and it will be a transformative experience. And feel free to get in touch with Ms. White, to contact me if you have any pressing questions. I can be a resource for anyone on the application process, the law school experience, or practice as an attorney. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much. This was so wonderful, so great, and I appreciate all the time you've taken out of your busy, busy day to just sit down and do this. So I'm so personally grateful. So, and with that, I'll go ahead and close us out. Students, don't forget we have more to come in the semester, so stay tuned and watch your emails, and I will definitely share Mr. Stricker's information with anybody who requests it. Thank you all so much for joining us, and y'all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.